Welcome back to Gators Gameday Live. I am Seth Varnadore. I am alone this week. Bud is busy with some real life stuff. Uh, and, it's not really worthwhile to get away from real life stuff to talk about the Gators right now. Um, but a couple things. Just want to do a quick preview, a little review of some of Florida's biggest issues. These are not going to be mind blowing to anybody, but the one I want to talk about in particular is Florida in playing middle of the field closed, especially playing cover three. There's been a bunch of coverage busts. If you've been watching the games, it's something you've seen quite a few times. So I thought we could talk through that with a little film. Then we'll preview Mississippi State. If you have questions or comments, leave them. I'll try to answer questions. But unfortunately, let's get to the film. So when Austin Armstrong came over, he was really big in the cover three world. Likes to go middle of the field closed, gives another safety in the box, gets you some flexibility, especially if you want to do creepers and drop guys out because you can drop defensive ends into the flat. If you're in the boundary, you can drop them into the hook. So it's an easy kind of area to get to, and they like to get to a lot of cover three. In fact, we're going to look at in a second, but they're running cover three more than anything else defensively. And unfortunately, they've not been great at it. So your number one coverage, you're not very good at it. It's going to lead to some issues. So let's take a look at some of these issues. We'll start against Miami. This is actually, I think, a pretty good rep of it. So the safety's playing a little bit lower because he's in the red zone. If he got the drop they'd gotten on some of these cover three reps, he'd be in the second row. So you can't do that when you're in the red zone. So that helps. You see three deep across the top. You have underneath defenders. You're only rushing three here. This is one of the few times that Cam Ward was somewhat uncomfortable and just were looking for somewhere to throw it. Avoids the rush, throws it away. So later in that same game, you're going to get to a similar look where I'm showing too high at the snap. He'll roll down, drop back. The problem, it seems like in this game a lot, was how deep the middle of the field safety was. Right, you'd like to pin down on that, I think, a little bit sooner. And there's not a ton of room, or there is a ton of room between kind of the second and third level of this defense, where you've got the backers here, safeties here. If the safety's a little tighter, it's harder to make this throw because I can't, put as much air underneath it. But when you're that far off, it makes it a little bit easier. Similar look here. Initially show it too high, look, roll down, three deep. And the tough part about it is some of these look like, and it's always hard to tell exactly because there's so many rules with these coverages. It's not just as simple as always being, hey, we're just dropping to a spot and we've got eyes on the quarterback. It's not really that simple most of the time, but here it certainly looks like, I got a guy flying out the flat. It looks more like a spot drop, and you got guys going out to nowhere, really. And again, safety's really deep here. This was a really well-timed throw by Cam Ward. Good anticipation. But again, your safety's playing really deep. So here against Texas A&M, you try to run it with like a creeper look. And it certainly looks like this is a 3rd and 8. They're going to blitz the safety. It certainly looks like he's playing to the flat. Now, this isn't like the best call because you'll see how far your linebacker is going to have to run. You got your linebacker here. He's going to have to run and get all the way out here because if he plays flat, If he plays curl flat, he's got to get to the hook over here. It can be a long way to go, especially if you got this flood concept called. But the issue here is if he is the curl flat player and he's a blitzer, he's taking steps here and then getting back out late. Well, this is just easy money out here. So cover 3 is not super difficult, seemingly. Like, it's something you see at almost all levels of football, people running cover 3. And it seems like a lot of these busts are in cover 3. And it's just, why is that? Why? It's not a super hard coverage to teach. Now, there's some intricacies that can make it more difficult, but there's seemingly busts all the time. You see it again here. He, for some reason, comes in. And if he just drops, now it isn't a perfect call, but if he just, instead of coming here, if he just drops, now if I throw this, maybe the idea was, okay, yeah, it's not perfect. This guy's going to have to fly over here to the hook. But if I get to my curl flat area and he drops it down, I can rally, make a tackle, because we're going to be making him throw way short of the sticks as we're bringing this blitz, right? But when I bust getting out to the curl flat, now it's easy money for the offense, right? And this is one where this one with the bust was kind of so bad that you're talking with, if any of you are in the Gators Breakdown Discord, JP Gator does a really good job looking at stuff. So we're talking through this, and it's like the bust is so bad, you're almost like, well, this can't be cover 3. But it's certainly, like everybody else, it certainly seems like it's cover 3. Teams will do this a lot. If they play cover 3, they'll man that up to the single. They'll just man it up. So theoretically, I think he's deep middle. He's deep third. One of these two is hook. One of these two is curl flat. So one's curl, one's curl flat. Hard to tell exactly who busts. I don't know if he's supposed to be the flat player. He's playing the hook. And then you're manned up there. But the quarterback looks to the single receiver side and then turns back. And your safety is shading over the top of the single receiver side. And you can see it really well here. If it is cover 3, which it certainly seems like it, he's getting to a deep third. There's no reason to get on top of a vertical that, first of all, is covered very well. And then you're the middle field player. So there's no reason to go get on top of that, even if the quarterback looks that way. Because this would happen. Move to safety with your eyes, come back. The blitz doesn't get there. Now, if he's in the middle of the field and this quarterback has to hold this thing, right? If I can't just turn and rip it right there, if my safety's here, I might have a chance to make a sack here, but he's not. And it's just those kind of things that are consistently baffling. So, I don't know what the issue is, but we've got some good info here from my co-host, Mr. Bud Davis. And these are Florida's coverage numbers. So let's zoom that in a little bit. So these are the coverages on the far right. So cover 0, cover 2 man, quarters, cover 2, cover 1, cover 3. You got attempts, completion percentage, deserved catch percentage, yards attempt, yards game rating against yards per coverage snap, right? Cover 3 is the last one. It's cover 1 and cover 3 are their two most popular coverages according to this data. And you see the completion percentage. Yeah, that's Tyler says like 12 wasn't covered. That's been an issue. I think safety play has been pretty poor through a few games. Now it can get fixed, but that's just you're seeing some consistent issues there. Cover 3, cover 1 are their top 2 played coverages with 20 and 23 snaps. You look at the completion percentage against those 2 coverages, 70% and 74%. Yards an attempt, 8.6 against cover 1, 13.1 against cover 3. Yards per coverage snap, 7.5 against cover 1, 11.6 per cover 3. So every time somebody drops back against you, Florida playing cover 3, it's a first down, which is not great. So that is that'll be something to watch going forward, because that is a big part of the defense, is being able to play with 3 deep over the top. You can kind of theoretically keep a bottle on things or keep a lid on things. But if you're really bad at playing it, and now it hurts a lot of your, especially if it's attached to a lot of your sims and your creepers and all those different kinds of rushes, where, when Patrick Toney first came in, you're talking how smart this is. It's safe rushes. I can get the illusion of blitz while still dropping 7. But, I mean, every time I'm in cover 3, I'm giving up a first down. That kind of goes out the window. So it is an interesting problem. Interestingly enough, it seems like passer rating against cover 2 has been pretty decent, and cover 0, but they've only had 2 attempts of it. So I don't know how much you can really glean from that. So yeah, when you're kind of a cover 3 based defense and you can't run cover 3 very well, it's not good. And that's what we're seeing this year from Florida. And it hasn't been great the last 3 or 4 years, historically poor defenses. And this year, it's just, some of the things, it's like these are your base things and you can't do them very well. That's not a really good look for the coaching staff. And that's why a lot of fans are really upset. So deservedly so. All right, but a chance to rebound this week against Mississippi State. Jeff Lebby's the head coach. They're running veer and shoot, Bryles offense. So you're going to see pretty high tempo. I'll put together a little bit of film just kind of to give a flavor, and then we'll talk some play calling from Bud. Actually, let's do the play calling first so we can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at when we go into the film. All right, so we'll look at Mississippi State's play calling chart. We'll look at their defense first. All right, so Mississippi State, 47% success rate, 0.8 EPA, so positive EPA on offense. Pretty good at throwing the football, and that's what they do the most. You see 54% of their plays have been passing attempts, 34% have been design runs, and 11% are sacks and scrambles. I don't think they are really great up front on either side of the football. So theoretically, that's an advantage for Florida. It hasn't been really through either of the FBS games they've played so far, but you would think this would be a week. Friend of the show-ish, Bud Elliott, I think, has said that Mississippi State is not a power 4 on the line of scrimmage. That's kind of his thought. He's a pretty good gambler and talks to a lot of coaches. So I've heard him say Mississippi State is not really good on either line of scrimmage. So that would bode well for Florida. You see not a ton of motion, a little bit more than average RPO. Interesting thing, you think throwing the ball a ton, which these offenses actually typically run the ball a little better than you think because they get you in these light boxes and they can run it. And you see here their success rate against a light box has been pretty good, and their EPA per play against a light box has been pretty good. But for a vast majority of their snaps, 90% of their snaps, they are in 11 personnel. So 3 receivers, 1 tight end. You see that's way above average. Not been bad, pretty decent, 48% success rate, 9 EPA per play. When they throw the ball, so look at their passing, 41% play action. So that is a feature of this offense. They play action a ton, RPO a decent bit, RPOs and play action, trying to constantly get the backers to suck in and get throws behind them. Not a ton of throws. So they're in 11 a lot, but you see not a ton of throws to the tight end. Not a crazy amount of screen, not a lot of throws to the running backs. A lot of their throws are going out wide, and you'll see they've had pretty good success rate and really good success rate in the slot. A 65% success rate, half a point EPA per play from the slot. That is pretty good. And if I'm playing Florida, that's who I will be targeting, right? I want to throw on those safeties, make them prove it to you a little bit. And you'll see they love to take shots down the field. This offense features a ton of switch releases, a lot of vertical throws. It's going to be tough to defend. You see deep targets, really high EPA in those deep targets. So they've been able to connect on some. You'll see that here soon. 59% of the time they're playing against the middle of the field close, which Florida likes to play a good bit. 50% success ratio, or success rate rather, and 0.12 points or EPA. Haven't seen a ton of blitz, but blitz has given them some problems. So you see, kind of seen below average blitz numbers, and their success rate is 36% against blitz, and they're actually negative EPA against the blitz. So I wonder if Florida will try to ratchet up the pressure a little bit. And if you do, can you get home before the ball gets thrown? Not a ton of quarterback design runs so far, mostly running back, a little mix of gap and zone, and more outside than inside. So haven't been able to run inside very much, not been great at gap blocking. So let's take a look at some film here on the Mississippi State team. We'll watch offense and defense. Defensively, I don't have their play calling numbers, but the defensive coordinators talked about being multiple. Coleman Hutzler is the defensive coordinator, one-time coach at Florida, coached special teams for a long time, special teams and linebackers, was a co-defensive coordinator at Texas for a year. Been around for a while. I think he was with Muschamp at South Carolina. Pretty good coach, but they're going to play some 3 down front, 4 down front. We'll get to them in a second. But here's the offense. Be ready for, if you play off, they're going to throw quick. They're going to do a lot of package plays. So right here, this is probably a called run. See how the linemen are moving here? This is probably a called run. Corner's off. He just whips it out and throws it to the hitch. And then they'll try to lull you to sleep with those hitches. You try to squat on them, they're going to run by you. So a lot of these, you're going to see a ton of choice, I think, in this offense, where I also cover USF, similar offense. Not exactly the same, I don't think, but pretty close just because play callers are different. He's got the option to run a go. He's got an option to run a hitch depending on coverage. Down here, it may be similar. It could just be a vertical choice for the receiver to this side. You will see some dead routes where one side is not really running hard at all and the other side's live. I think you're going to see a lot of this, switch releases. So this is kind of post-wheel, but you're going to get switches down the field in terms of where guys end up. This receiver here, number 3, is Kevin Coleman. He was a 4-star receiver out of high school, top 100 player, I believe. Ended up going to Jackson State with Coach Prime, and then transferred to Louisville last year, and now Mississippi State, and he's playing pretty well. He's a dynamic guy you got to watch for. So here's kind of probably a vertical choice. They like to do this a ton where they're kind of dig here to see if they can hold the safety, and now he's got the option to go, post, and probably curl. There may be more, but I would imagine those are the initial options, depending on the corner, his leverage, and how he plays it, trying to get him to stay here, and then it's really one-on-one outside, right? This is, I believe this is Mario Craver, who I think Florida recruited for a while in the last class, but, he just takes the go option and runs by the corner. Does the same thing here against Arizona State. So be ready for Mississippi State to take their shots down the field. They've got a little creativity. Eastern Kentucky, they had a reverse go for 41 yards and a touchdown. It was Creed Whittemore, another name that's familiar to Florida fans. Took it, housed it for 41 yards. Here's a nice little – they're basically going to run smash. You see you got the two safeties split wide. They're going to run the back up like he's blocking for quarterback draw, and then he's just going to keep going. Really, really cool design. Coastal Carolina busted this out in like 2020. And it's really hard to defend. So this is like a 7-on-7 special. Defensive coaches hate this in 7-on-7. They say you'll never get the running back down the middle of the field, but here you go. Here's how you can do it. Really well designed. You can see it from a wider view here. So there's some creativity. I think you're going to see some explosive plays from this offense. It's about how often you can kind of start. I think even Napier was talking about it with the tempo teams. If you can get them to go 3 and out and not let the tempo really get started, that's obviously a big help. Once you let them get rolling a little bit, it can be tough. And they're going to put you, we talked about blitzing them. They haven't been great against the blitz. But if you don't get home and they've got option routes where they can theoretically not be wrong and you miss a tackle, things like this can happen, right? So I think it's going to be a pretty tough matchup for Florida, just the way they play. Now, I don't think they're great up front. So that'll be the big kind of, can Florida's front for really kind of the first time this year against the FBS opponent, can they kind of make a real big impact in the passing game? But this is Eastern Kentucky right here. Eastern Kentucky is rushing 4, able to kind of get home. And I think if you kind of get in this quarterback's face, you can rattle him a little bit. He has been pretty decent against the blitz, looking at some of his numbers. But I don't think they're great on either front. So this should be a place where you have an advantage. Talking about their defensive coordinator has talked about he does not want to play. He's not going to play static front, static coverages. He wants to mix them up a ton. So here's a pretty cool one, right? We've been talking about Florida playing cover 3, right? It looks like it may be, you got middle of the field here. I'm going to drop to 3. They actually play like a Tampa 2 look. So he actually becomes a deep half player. He plays the flat. He becomes a deep half player. And now he can play anything kind of down the pipe here. Quarterback thinks he's getting this. Looks to throw the out route. Corner just expands and waits for it and houses it for a touchdown. So I thought it was a pretty good example of kind of them showing different coverages, mixing it up. So you're going to have to be on your P's and Q's. Here's kind of something Florida-esque. They're showing a lot of guys at line of scrimmage, end up only rushing 3, try to play zone behind it. As you see, like, quarterback has some time to throw, able to complete it, third and long for a first down. I don't have any Toledo game in here, but Toledo is able to throw the ball pretty well against this defense, and Arizona State was able to run the ball really well. So Toledo had 0.7 EPA per drop back, which is 97th percentile, and had a really high success rate. They didn't run the ball very well, but they threw the ball really well. Conversely, Arizona State was 0.53 negative EPA every time they dropped back, but it was 0.24 EPA every time they ran the ball. So Arizona State ran the ball on Mississippi State pretty easily, and Toledo threw the ball. So you see here, I think Florida will be able to run the football. If they're not, I mean, there's a lot of problems. But if you're not able to run the ball this week, I think you've got some real issues, which they may have anyways. But I think you can see some of this, a little pistol action, wide zone. I think Arizona State ran for over 300 yards in this game. And you can see why they had some trouble stopping this run game. Yeah, Arizona State ran for 365 yards in this game. So I don't think they're great up front. I think Florida will be able to run at them. And, so this should be a game where your offense plays pretty well. Speaking of, we can look and see where is Florida at in their play calling so far this year. Everybody's favorite topic, Florida's play calling. And so a little heavier pass than run. I'm sure some of that is game state related. When you are losing by a lot, you tend to pass a little bit more. Obviously, a ton of motion hasn't really resulted in a lot of EPA per play. Little less than average RPO stuff. I thought that's some things they could have done better. 12 personnel was only called 25% of the time, but it seems to be, you see there's a 60% success rate in positive EPA. 11 personnel has been negative EPA. Sacks and scrambles continue to crush this team like they did last year. Anthony Richardson's year, it was decent there because he was able to avoid sacks. Obviously, his scrambling ability. But the last 2 years, it's been awful, and sacks have just been pretty crushing for this team. 6-man box, light box. You're not seeing a ton of light boxes because you are in 12 and 11 and how you like to play. You have a good success rate, but you're not explosive at all. So play action has been the one place they've been able to get some explosiveness and some success. 50% success rate on play action, 0.47 EPA. Slot target, DK has played pretty well. I think Badgers played pretty well. The tight end targets are probably maybe a little lower than anticipated. Running backs have not added a ton in the passing game. Not a lot of screen. They're taking some shots down the field, but you can see their success rate is poor and negative EPA. So you're losing points basically every time you take a shot because they haven't really hit many of them. Outside of the Samford game, so it's not shocking looking at this where it is. I think the one thing that's a little bit interesting is they're running outside. I think a lot more than they had previously. I'm not sure if that's personnel related or just scheme, game plan related, but we'll see if that holds against Mississippi State. But so far, pretty poor showing from the Florida offense. I think that's been the biggest disappointment because the defense has been bad for 3-4 years. So you're hoping for some improvement, but I don't think you were hoping it was this bad. But offensively has been, I think, kind of the bigger issue. Now maybe you played two really good defenses. I don't know. The plans have not been really inspiring so far, and you have not executed very well outside of some flashes against Samford with DJ Lagway. So last thing we can look at kind of the game on paper preview here. And so the offense versus the Mississippi State defense is kind of gnarly. I don't think this is a great Mississippi State defense. Florida should be able to run the ball on them. But obviously the matchup that's a little more worrying for Florida is Mississippi State's offense against that Gator defense. You saw Mississippi State take shots down the field. They're going to get some explosives in this game, I'd imagine. It's kind of about limiting that, which is not something Florida was great at last year. But if they can do that in this game, which I think they can get to the quarterback. I don't think Mississippi State's great up front. You can see EPA being explosive, it kind of helps them, but you look at their rush success rate here is not great for Mississippi State. So if Florida can kind of get them in some third and longs, because they haven't had too long to go in third downs so far this season. If they can get them some third and longs, maybe get them off the field. Toledo seemed to have them in third and long quite a bit. Was able to get after the passer and things like that. So, yeah, could be an ugly game. Could be, I think it's very possible it's kind of a higher scoring game. But this should be one where Florida matches up really well in the line of scrimmage. I don't think Mississippi State is great up front on either side of the ball. So hopefully Florida would have an advantage there and is able to take advantage of it. I think Florida should be able to run the football. And like Billy said this week in his scheme, that kind of sets everything up when they're not able to do that. Now, the fact they're not able to do that in year 3 is an indictment on him, right, in the recruiting. But schematically, they want to run the ball, get safeties in the box, and take deep shots against single high safeties, which I think is kind of what they're built for. And so if you run the ball, hopefully you get into single high safety looks, which big debate today, thanks to Mel Kiper, is that teams are just going to stay in too high and make you run the ball. Well, Arizona State was cool with that. They're in for 365. So we'll see if Florida has a similar success. And either way, we'll try to be here for halftime of the game and talk through it. Maybe a little bit post-game. Hopefully, it's a lot better looking than it has been the last few weeks. Thanks for joining me here on Gators Game Day Live. See you on Saturday. Hopefully, it's a lot more fun than the last few Saturdays have been.